So, this has certainly been a fun year so far in terms of camera and tech, specifically for smaller cameras with, I would say, unique purposes. For me, as someone who gets excited about new gear, and whenever you sniff a little competition between brands, it's been fun. Specifically, something that really got me excited would be these two, and that is what we're going to be comparing in this video. So in this video, we're going to review and compare the Insta360 X5 and the DJI Osmo 360. So of course, when it comes to making 360 cameras, the Insta360 lineup is definitely more mature. Now, the X5 has been around a little bit longer than the Osmo 360, and in fact, I got this a little bit earlier than the Osmo 360 as well. But since I have both of them right now for reviews, we might as well talk about them together and compare them. And believe me, as a gear enthusiast, this is the kind of review that really gets me going, even if it's like double the testing work, for just a single video. So we're gonna go a little bit in depth. I'm gonna go and do a little bit of a rundown when it comes to what is obvious and of course what they imply. Now, the Insta360 X5, it's definitely longer, it's definitely bigger. This is 199.8 grams, while this is 183. Now, when it comes to the screens, this is actually something that has a lot of implications when it comes to usage and user experience. For the Insta360 X5, it's a 2.5-inch screen that is vertical. And the Osmo 360 now has a 2-inch screen that is more horizontal. I'm not particularly favoring one over the other, but this will of course have implications on your monitoring, especially if you're the kind of creator or the kind of basically just a 360 camera user who has preference over a certain platform. For example, if most of your 360 stuff are going on social media for quick videos, such as Instagram, such as Reels, Facebook Reels, TikTok, and even YouTube Shorts, then technically, if you're also using a feature that I'm going to be talking about later about framing, then this is going to be more organic because you're already seeing it. Of course, if you're viewing it this way and it's mounted this way, you're already seeing it in the format and orientation that you're going to be shooting on. Now, if you're more of a long form person, this is of course more horizontal, then it's also more natural for your preview. Now, for me, since I create for technically all the platforms, then vertical, horizontal, it doesn't really matter because those are going into reframing down the line. Now, as I said, the Insta360 comes in a longer form and has a more natural feel to the hands. The Osmo 360 is shorter because the screen is already horizontal and your fingers are quite close to the lenses. Now, for both of them, and this is probably the photographer in me, I never want the feeling of my fingers touching the lenses, especially because I technically have oily hands. So those are gonna smudge, and when you have a smudge on fisheye lenses, those are going to be visible. So this has a more comfortable feel in my opinion. And again, that's just my opinion. And also take note that these things, most of the time, they're not going to be on your hands because you're going to be using a selfie stick or any mounting accessory that you have to be able to mount them to get the right perspective, especially if you're using them for technically what they were made for, which is action, right? So I don't think you're going to be holding them anyway. But yes, it is still part of the experience. The X5 feels more natural to hold on my hands. Now when it comes to the build, these are both waterproof. This can go all the way to 10 meters. This can go to 15 meters. They both have similar buttons. On the left is a record button. On the right is a mode switch button, and then the power button are both on the right side. However, on the X5 there's another extra button, which is the quick shortcut, and you can technically modify what that's going to do. At the same time, they both have separate doors for the USB-C port, and on the other side would be for the battery and for the micro SD card. One thing to note though is that the Osmo 360 also has an internal storage that is 105 gigabytes. And the last thing on my list of physical features, well, unlike the Osmo 360, the Insta360 X5 comes with lenses that are easily replaceable. So you can buy the replacement lenses. They come with tools that you can use yourself, so you can replace the lenses if ever they get scratched up. Now I think that's a good thing because it's going to be easier for the user who is going to be using it in, I would say, accident-prone things to easily fix the camera if ever that happens. And you don't need to leave it at the service center and wait a week or whatever. You can just go to the mall and buy the replacement lenses or order them online and do it yourself. I haven't seen anywhere on the internet about how the lenses on the Osmo 360 can be replaced. I'm guessing it has to be done by someone qualified. Now let's talk cameras and processor. Now, of course, you know that a 360 camera makes use of two cameras with two fisheye lenses on either side. So the same thing applies for both cameras. I don't think that needs any further explanation. Now, one key difference is that the Osmo 360 uses a 1/1.1 inch sensor, almost a 1 inch, and the Insta360 X5 has a little bit of a smaller sensor that is a 1/1.28. Now, whenever I'm talking about camera gear, meaning mirrorless cameras, meaning full frame APS-C, then yes, sensor size has a lot of implications. I'm not too sure about how big of a difference there would be between a 1/1.1 and a 1/1.28 sensor. But you know, when you look at them, they look very similar. Now, here's an interesting thing about that difference. We say that a bigger sensor would be more naturally able to work better in low light and would of course give us less noise in low light situations. But a huge difference between these two is that this has one processor and this uses three. And I did a little bit of digging about that. So technically, each of the cameras on either side are sending information to one processor, and that is what they call the Pro Imaging chip. Now, those two Pro Imaging chips will be taking care of color, dynamic range, and noise. So for each of the cameras, there's one processor each. Then, when it's done from that stage, it's gonna go over to another processor, which is called the AI chip. What the AI chip is going to do is, number one, stitch the two images together, to stabilize the entire stitched image, and then the third would be to recognize highlights. And when I say highlights, I'm not talking about exposure, I mean like moment highlights. For example, you're hiking and there's something that happened and it will recognize, the AI will recognize that moment and give you kind of a choice when you're editing to choose that. I'm guessing it's also using the audio to be able to recognize these moments, but that is basically a huge difference because there is a lot of AI going on in here, not just for stitching, but also in recognition and tracking. Now, this also has a really useful feature, especially if you have decided on what format you're going to be using the video for. And what is that? It's AI framing. And that means it's going to track where you are and it's going to keep the video tracking you while you're moving, while you're doing whatever you're doing, whether you're hiking, skiing, skating, or whatever. And it's gonna stabilize that. So everything is smooth, and all you need to do would be trim if you want to trim, and then post it on your social media or whatever. It's a very handy and efficient way of minimizing the process by just, framing it using AI and then rendering it on its own and then having it ready, already cooked and baked, ready for you to share, which is the point of all of these, right? So that AI reframing is, I think, one of the biggest implications of this. That feature isn't available yet on the Osmo 360, maybe in future updates, either firmware or hardware. I don't know if it's possible with firmware, but yes, with the X5, it's that easy, it's that simple, it's that straightforward. So very helpful for people who don't want to overcomplicate things. Now let's talk about the image quality. Both of these can do 8K, and by 8K I mean it's a total of the two stitched images. So 8K on the Osmo 360 and 8K on the Insta360 X5. However, this can do 8K 30p. This can do up to 8K 50. So a little bit more leeway if you want to slow down your footage at 8K. However, of course, you can also opt to do a little bit resolution to be able to do faster frame rates. And if you choose the slow motion mode, then technically this can do 4K at 120 frames per second, and the Osmo 360 can do 4K at 100 frames per second. So another 20 frames per second difference, now favoring the X5. Because of that processing, it also has what is called adaptive tone. Now, the Osmo 360 has the standard HDR, meaning that it's technically getting multiple exposures and then balancing them out and averaging them out to get a more balanced and a more vibrant shot. Adaptive tone, it's like HDR, but again with a touch of AI. What the AI is doing is that it is sensing the frame, it is sensing the subject, and then it would do a more, I would say, meticulous HDR, so that, for example, I'm in the frame, then I would be the priority when it comes to details. And then the rest of the frame is going to be balanced out based off of me. So I'm getting the sense that the AI functioning is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on this, and that is going to be helpful when it comes to how you want your output to be flexible and at the same time how you want it to be straightforward. Now, to have a better grasp of everything we've talked about so far, let's compare the footage. And we're going to compare, number one, how well these two cameras handle the stitching that they need to do on basically everything they shoot. And then let's compare footage at daytime using the maximum resolution and then other resolutions as well. And then lastly, we're gonna check out how it looks like at night or in low light. So these two cameras, I noticed, are, of course, they were made to do the stitching that they have to do in every single frame. So I would say they are very similar. Now, when it comes to 360-degree images and footage, there is one spot in the entire frame, in the entire 360-degree frame or image, that is the most crucial or the hardest technically. And similarly, the biggest pain point of every 360-degree image or footage, the most crucial would be the one closest to the base, which means the one right below the camera, especially if you're using like a tripod or a stand. Now, when comparing the footage, technically, I haven't seen much of any stitching errors, except that there's more of a trace of the nadir or of whatever is on the base of the camera on the Osmo 360. It feels more natural with the X5 when you look at the base or when you look at where the selfie stick is supposed to be. The only trace is like a circle coming from the selfie stick, which is yellow. And it looks very natural. You won't even notice it if you don't know what it is. Now let's compare the footage. And for this, I'm not even gonna give my judgment. I want you to chime in which one you think is better, the Insta360 X5 or the Osmo 360. Now the footage on the left will be coming from the X5, and the footage to your right is gonna be coming from the DJI. So this is the first one, technically not shot at the same time, but one after the other with the same lighting situation. So the Insta360 X5 is filming at 8K 30 using adaptive tone, while to your right is the Osmo 360 filming at 8K 30 as well. Now this time to your left is the Insta360 X5 filming at 5.7K at 30 frames per second, also with adaptive tone. And then to your right is the DJI Osmo 360 filming at a little bit higher resolution at 6K 30 frames per second. Now here's where I think there would be way more difference. To your left is the X5 shooting at night at 8K 30 using adaptive tone and pure video. And to your right, this is the footage from the DJI Osmo 360 shooting at 8K 30 with night mode. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now let's talk about what's actually more important, and that is user experience, especially for cameras like these that were made to make filming much easier for people who were technically doing something else while filming. Now, I've already said this, but I think it's better classified with this part of the discussion, that this feels more natural to hold as compared to this, and I just again touched the lens on the DJI with this part of my finger, and I already told you why that gives me the ick. Again, also depending on where you're going to be posting and what orientation you're going to be rendering your videos at, then you might have your opinion based on that, because this is vertical and this is horizontal. More than that, there actually are features that are very handy for both. Now this one has voice commands and it has gestures as well. And the basic gesture would be raising your hand and then opening your palm, and then it's gonna start recording and stop recording or take a picture depending on that. Now this doesn't have voice command, it has similar gestures, but at the same time, you can also use the twist to shoot function, which means that if you twist the camera while it's on standby, technically, then it's gonna start shooting. So I think that's very, very helpful. At the same time, again, you can also technically do a quick shoot by using a long press on the shutter button. It's gonna turn on and it's going to be recording right away. Also, again, remember there is a shortcut button or quick button right here on the side. Now, I think the most impactful when it comes to user experience, that would be AI framing. And again, all you really need to do is press the mode button. Instead of video, select Insta Frame. And when you do that, it's already going to be tracking you and it's already going to be framing depending on your motion. So that is very handy if you don't want to do that much editing anymore. Now the next question, what happens when you're done filming? Well, technically, both these two cameras are dependent on apps, which means that both of them are going to be very easy to connect to your smartphone using the app. Now, of course, this uses the Insta360 app that allows you to control and also monitor and also edit after you're filming. But more importantly, what I wish the DJI would also have is what Insta360 has, and that is the Insta360 desktop studio app. Technically, I love the fact that I can just load my micro SD card onto my computer and then start working on whatever I need to work on with the 360 clips on my desktop. Why? Because, well, for me, most of the time, the clips are going to be admixed with footage coming from non-360 cameras. So it's not just going to be those clips that will be coming from the 360 camera, and it's not just going to be coming from my phone. So I prefer that I do the editing and even the reframing part and the de-warping part technically on the same device that I'll be doing the editing of my other clips and putting them together into one video, right? So having that option on the Insta360, that you have a desktop app, I think is a huge advantage for creators like me. Now, another thing, not just when it comes to editing, but like the entire app experience as well, the Insta360 X5 might not have a built-in internal memory. However, it does have cloud support, which means that when you get this device, you automatically get 1 terabyte for a year for free, and then down the line you can renew that or even expand that to 2 terabytes. And what that's going to do is whenever, of course, you connect it to the app, it's also backing it up and syncing it up to the cloud. The great thing about that is that, for example, you've filmed so many clips and you've maxed out your micro SD card, you know that it has been backed up to the cloud, so you can technically reformat your micro SD card or select individual clips that you want to delete without worrying that they'll be gone because they're already automatically backed up. That's the thing. If you've been using this on your phone, I mean transferring the footage to your phone, and you're not even taking out the micro SD card, and then your phone is also bulking up, you're not sure if you've already backed it up to a computer or anywhere else. Well, technically, if you have the cloud support, then that's going to be very helpful. Now, the last thing, well, whenever I get a new camera, no matter how small it is, I automatically look at the accessories and what can be helpful for me. Now, I haven't gotten much. I do have the invisible selfie stick for the Insta360 X5, and that's also usable, of course, on the Osmo 360 because they're just using 1/4 inch threads, which is amazing, right? But as far as the array of accessories, then of course, since this has been around longer, and not just the X5, but the entire lineup of Insta360, they have way more accessories that can be very useful. Well, I haven't really purchased the ones I want, which is like the utility cage and then the microphone. Well, this one connects to the DJI microphones using Bluetooth, so that's really good. But Insta360 also came up with their own microphone, so I'm yet to get those and test those out. But yes, I feel like I've gone through every single thing I know about these cameras and every single part of my experience trying them out. But again, as you all know, whenever I compare products, whenever I compare cameras or lenses or even camera bags, the verdict will always have to come from you because you will be the one to apply it to your own use case. So this is our comparison of the 360 cameras of 2025. And let me know in the comments which one feels better for you, and let me know as well what your use case is. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Nicco Valenzuela. I'm a landscape and architectural photographer, and these are a recent epiphany for me because they can technically help me take better behind the scenes footage of my shoot, whether that be for landscape photography as a hobby or for architectural photography professionally. These are going to be my BTS buddies, and I don't mean the K-pop group. But yes, if you're into any photography or camera tech content, then do click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. In any case, thanks for watching.